everybody. This is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat. Hey, Lori, how are you today?
Hi, Omar. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to stay above this heat wave we're having. You walk outside and it's like you're greeted with an oven, a roaring fire.
Oh, man. So that's that time of year in Texas then, huh?
It's actually early.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, the high should be about 95, 93 to 95. And now it's they're averaging 100. So with major humidity. So it's just like,
That is brutal.
But I'm still out there walking my dog, and they call that hormesis, right?
Yeah.
What doesn't kill you makes you a little stronger.
Exactly. Yeah, so I won't rub it in, but New York is actually beautiful the last couple of days, maybe 72-ish, no humidity. It's like very unusual where I know it's the start of summer, but it's really nice.
That's wonderful. That's perfect weather.
It really is. So today we have a great guest. And
yes, we do.
Yeah, Andy Chan. I really love what he's delivering as far as, and I get fascinated by just the other cultures and how they vary so much from America and how we have all these issues with our obesity epidemic. But he actually grew up, at least I should say grew up, but he spent a portion of his life in America. So he was really able to just demonstrate the difference between America and Chinese culture, specifically when it comes to food. And even though they're catching up with their issues as well.
True. Yeah. He and also his expertise is the fitness realm, but he uses an Asian flavor, if you will, things that, they've been using for a long time in terms of optimizing health. So there's a lot to be learned from different cultures.
Absolutely. Yeah. So he utilizes traditional Chinese medicine big time in his practice. And it's really interesting to just see like the dynamics. And like you said, these are century-old traditions that have kept Asian people very healthy for forever. And usually, remember, you make a mention in the podcast as well, like traditionally slimmer and just more in shape, better longevity. And unfortunately, our Western ideas are catching up.
Yeah, that's true. That is sad to say. I know even in the Okinawa island, if you will, the elders are still living longer, but the next generation are not, right? Yeah. They're experiencing, the Western McDonald's and, it's really, really sad. So
I know
we got to keep that traditional diet if we can.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump into the show.
Okay.
Hey, Andy, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thanks for having me. I'm coming to you from the future. It is 7:30 in Hong Kong. So hello.
Thank you, Andy, for stopping by. So happy to have you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always amazing that, what technology can do, that we can have a conversation, even though we're literally halfway around the world.
I know. You're in Hong Kong, correct?
I am. I'm in Hong Kong. I've been here since 2014. Well, I grew up here, and then I was in the US for 10 years for middle school, high school, and college. And then I came back to Hong Kong in 2014.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, Andy, I guess you just opened the door to our first question, because you spent your prime years in America probably not doing what you should be doing, at least in the health world, because you know how I'm really excited to just kind of bring off the comparisons where you are in China compared to America. So could you tell us a little bit about your experience in America, especially the food choices that you were probably introduced to at that time?
Yeah, well, first of all, I've got to say I actually had a blast in the US in my 10-year stay there, and obviously as a teenager and as a college student, that's kind of when we develop our philosophy of life and our outlook in life, and that's kind of where I got educated, and as a result, I think a lot of my philosophy, my work ethic, and the way I look at life is influenced by my 10-year stay. And I can actually just point to one difference, and that is, well, in case of the listeners didn't know, I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach, and I'm an educator here in Hong Kong. And so I do a lot of education work. Yes, and an author. Thank you
of dynamic balance. Yes.
I forget to say that sometimes.
I know.
But hey, thanks, sir. Thanks.
Oh, sure. So absolutely.
I'll go out to teach these workshops sometimes. And let's say if we have participants that are mostly Asian, with Asian background, or they're from Hong Kong, they're from local communities, usually they'll just sit there and listen without question, as if, they have to respect the authority. And since I'm the instructor, they just sit there and listen and don't ask questions, because sometimes that may be perceived as challenging the authority. But, from an American educated background, that's not the ideal learning atmosphere, because that means that the workshop is so dull, because it's just a one-way street. It's just me talking. On the other hand, if, I'm teaching someone that is of Western background, then there's a lot more interaction, because we in the West were encouraged to ask questions. We want to know more. And when we want to know more, we just naturally ask the things that we want to ask. So I would say a big difference right there is just the way we communicate and the way we are in the classroom setting. So, and then, which actually brings me to kind of why I started questioning different things, and why I'm coming to you today as the author of Dynamic Balance, because in the US, so back in high school, to your question of my tenure stay in the US, in high school, we just eat a lot of processed foods. And then when we get to the athletic fields, we'll be taught a generic athletic diet, right? A lot of chicken and a lot of pasta and a lot of broccoli. The problem was there was no variety in the foods that we ate. So,
and this is in the United States?
This is in the United States. And because the United States is so advanced, so the diet in the United States is somehow seen as the gold standard of the health and fitness industry.
No.
Right? Open any textbook. Yeah. And you'll be amazed, all of these, even people in China now, there's people who are working out, they're doing this, one chicken breast and then some broccoli and some sweet potatoes.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking, in my head, the typical Western diet, which is full of refined processed foods. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Because, in Asia, if you think about the diet, it's communal, right? You have 7-8 dishes, at least in China, and you share the dishes. But in the US, it's obviously quite individualistic, and you have whatever choice of meat you have for the day. But I think that in this way, our diet here is influenced by what's happening in the US.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, that is interesting. That's one of the things that must have been kind of a big difference when you first started and landed in America. To how did you acclimate as far as that was? Did your family just kind of stick with the traditional dishes, or was it something where you guys just absorbed what actually was happening diet-wise in America?
Yeah, well, I went to America. See, this is the word choice. I came to America. I came to America by myself because I went to boarding school. So my family was always in Hong Kong. And so in a boarding school, you have no choice but to acclimate to the school atmosphere. And I'm going to go off a tangent here. In some ways, I'm very glad I went at an early age, because I went when I was 13 years old. And I still remember I couldn't pronounce the TH sound. So the three, and I'll just say free as in an F, because I can pronounce the TH sound.
That's very common.
I'm glad I went.
Yeah.
I'm glad I went early, because the kids would make fun of me. And as a result, I had to practice, because once we get to an older age, we learn to respect others, especially, when my peers started learning Spanish, they realized how hard it is to learn a different language. And then they would respect me more, but then I wouldn't get corrected. So, I'm very glad that I went early.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So obviously the Western diet had to have had some influence on you, correct? In terms of health. Is there anything that, in terms of your diet and your physical health, that connection when you came here, or I guess became more aware, is a better way to put it?
Yeah, I would say that in the US, obviously, the more and more I get into this health and fitness world, the more I get exposed to this idea of calories in and calories out, which is often talked about on social media and on different wellness talks. But I think people would disagree to that to a certain extent in China and in other cultures of the world, because most people would see food as way more than just the sustenance of life. I know that you had Dr. Kate Shanahan on your podcast not too long ago, and I'm a big fan of her work. And you know, one thing she would point out is we all react to food a bit differently, different foods a bit differently, and the notion that all proteins are equal. You know, I think a lot of people would challenge this idea. Yet this is what is being preached currently, that, oh, if you have fish and have chicken, you know, since they're both proteins, they make that big of a difference from a protein perspective. But I'd say that we'll disagree to that. So I would say that, you know, the whole diet in the US, just the usual, I guess. There's not enough variety, and I think everyone is aware of that. But it's quite hard to break out of it, because I just remember, you know, we will be in college and I'll be like, oh, why don't we go have Vietnamese food? And in the Vietnamese food, they will have a lot of duck. But duck was seen as kind of odd, at least in the town that I was living in. So I guess that just speaks to the lack of variety that there was.
Mm. I definitely love duck. That's one of my favorite dishes.
Yeah.
Oh, forget it. So, Andy, can you just break down a little bit about, I know that you get into it in your book a lot, but what is the quick overview of Chinese medicine, you know, at its base?
Yeah, at its base, Chinese medicine, it's an ancient system that focuses on ways to achieve good health. So now we have to draw parallels with the Western medicine, right? So in physiology, we talk a lot about the concept of homeostasis, which is the self-regulating process that the body goes through to ensure that we survive and thrive, right? Despite all the obstacles that we go through in life. Well, in Chinese medicine, back then, they didn't have all the fancy lab equipment to look at different molecules. They didn't have the terminology such as ATP, blood sugar level, temperature, all that they didn't have. So as a result, they had to come up with a different set of languages to explain kind of how the body can self-regulate. And that's kind of how the terms came about. You've got qi, you've got yin yang, you've got 5 elements. And all these terms are just languages so that it can help us achieve homeostasis, which in Chinese medicine, we call it the balanced state. And it is believed that the more balanced we are, the more we can have a healthy life and thrive despite all the challenges that we go through.
That's really well said. Yeah. It's, you know, it's really important to have really good food and good supplements too, right? And one thing what we always want to remember is to keep everything in balance. And homeostasis is another word for it. And if anything is imbalanced, it means that we're gonna hear about it via signals from our body. So yeah, very good. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I also want to kind of elaborate on this a bit more, and that is sometimes our homeostasis is challenged by both internal and external factors. Meaning, in Chinese medicine, they will say that our bodies, as we go through seasonal changes, as we go through temperature changes, as we go through geographical changes, it is also going to challenge our body's ability to cope. And quite often time in the US, I would say, or not even in the US, you know, we live in the age of globalization, which means we can eat food from all over the world. We kind of just disregard the fact that, well, if you think about our lifestyle thousands of years ago, we would eat different foods according to the current season. And therefore, this is a big topic or a big emphasis of traditional Chinese medicine. And that is we should eat according to season, because that's what we're intended to do anyways.
So to that point, have you found that in America, because like you mentioned, our variety is lacking and we just have things on demand just for whatever we actually want, but again, to a limited degree of what we're used to and not introduced to, do you think that has taken a toll on our health overall?
I think, yes, it has, but I need to be cautious in the way that I put it, because sometimes I realize if I be too direct, and some people might be offended. But the truth is this: if you go to America, there's just an overwhelming amount of obese people. And I think people need to realize that this is the sad truth. And that is, if you go around, a lot of people are sitting in a chair and they can barely get off their chairs. And it is heartbreaking and saddening. And I'd say that when it comes to obesity, it's sometimes it might be hard to pinpoint because it might be stress, it might be the rest habits, it might be the diet or whatever they're going through. And but I would say diet is obviously a big part of it because, again, the lack of variety, processed foods, with all the drive-through fast food. I mean, it's just so convenient to get unhealthy foods. And if that's the case, then it's quite hard to avoid, obviously, because we always like to do the convenient thing as human nature. So I'll say, yes, diet has a big part to play in this obesity epidemic. And it's quite apparent in the US.
Yeah, it really is. And it's unfortunately catching, if you will, around the world. And, we think about how Asian people generally were always in leaner, right? And not anymore. I think, because of the Western food influence, as you well know, we have McDonald's over in Hong Kong, for example. It's changing. And, you look at the Okinawan people, the longest lived people in the world, they aren't adopting the traditional Okinawan diet. And so they're not living as long as their ancestors and even their grandparents, right?
Yeah, you're right. And I'll say it's also other factors, right? So in diet balance, we talked of, so diet is one thing. And another thing is actually our fascia, our soft tissue, which is influenced by our posture. So if you think about the modern lifestyle, not only are we eating junk food, not only are we not eating periodically, we're also sitting a lot. And we also know that current research tells us if we sit a lot, it triggers an inflammatory response. And if we're just in this inflammatory response all day, even if you eat all the superfood in the world, your digestive system is on break. And as a result, if it's the combination of these two that causes this insidious or disastrous effect, not only the diet, because, as a fitness coach, I can tell you, some people are super hyper focused on what they eat and they're super careful. Yet, because of the very fact that they're stressed all the time, they're going to see no results. So I must say that sometimes we must look beyond the diet and we must look at the emotions as well, because they are intricately linked.
Well said.
So Andy, when a person who comes to you to actually lose weight, what is the first thing that you actually do with that client?
Yeah, the first thing we usually do is they have to send me their 3-day schedule, as in what time they wake up, what do they eat, what time they sleep, and how much they exercise. Because I think if we don't look at the person holistically, then we're never going to find the root cause of the obesity or the root cause of why they're feeling pain everywhere. And then from there, we usually go about telling them to just have less flavors. That's usually my actually first advice, because for me, I like to stick with principles, because I think if we have principles that can navigate us through life, it's a lot easier than actually black and white plan, because things are unpredictable in life, right? And so usually the first thing I say is, why don't you have less sauce? Because nowadays, if you go to restaurants, your food is full of seasoning and it's full of MSG. So if you just do less salt, less sauce, and less seasoning, then you can actually get closer to the original taste of the food. So in Chinese medicine, food taste is separated or divided into different subcategories. And it is believed that these tastes have a therapeutic effect on the body and on your energy. So obviously, depending on your body state and your body constitution, you eat a different taste that matches your current state at the moment, because eating the wrong taste will exacerbate. Kind of like when someone's obese, for example, then in Chinese medicine, they'll say that they're quite damp because there's an excess of nutrients or excess of stuff in the body. And as a result, if we eat sweet stuff, sweet in taste, that's going to exacerbate the problem. And here's where it gets interesting, because people 4,000 or 5,000 years ago already knew that sweet stuff, it's only going to contribute to this dampness, which will make people more fat, which I find it profound. But Yeah. So
exactly.
if we get back to the original taste, number one, they can get acclimated to the natural taste of the food, which exposes whether the food is fresh or not. This is key. This is key because if you think about it, it's only foods that are not fresh that you have to cook with all this seasoning and all this refinement. If the fish that you're eating is fresh, then you actually don't need to cook it that much because you still get the freshness of the meat.
True.
So that's what I encourage people to do. Just less seasoning so that you can get the true taste of the food. And then slowly you get sick and tired of all the refined sugar. I promise.
Yeah, it's really amazing because literally our taste buds do change in relation to what we're feeding our bodies with. So so if you're not eating a lot of sugar, your taste buds change to adjust to that. And I think it's like every 3 days the taste buds change. So
really? Wow.
Yeah, being consistent really pays off in that way. So okay, I have an interesting question for you. So what about dim sum? That is, for me, an incredible meal, right? It's also
right.
to me not a very healthy meal, or maybe is it? I don't know. I would love your opinion on that.
Yeah, dim sum, I would say it depends on the type of dim sum. So for the listeners, dim sum, it's of Cantonese culture, and they're usually served in these bamboo cages that you get at different restaurants. I would say it depends on the dim sum itself.
It's like steamed dumplings filled with different, like meats and ground pork, or different types of little for us Americans, little hors d'oeuvres in these steamed baskets. Yeah.
But sometimes you get chicken feet, sometimes you get cow intestines, and sometimes you get shrimp dumplings. Sometimes you get vegetables. I think if you go to a dim sum restaurant here, you get at least 100 different kinds of variety.
It's
or
crazy.
Not at least 50.
And they like come to you, here, have another one. I think the fullest I've ever been in my whole life was eating at a dim sum restaurant in San Francisco. I've never been that full.
And what the good thing about dim sum though is it's relatively small portion. Now, if it's American, I don't know if it's super sized because it is in America after all. But in Hong Kong, so let's say if you order some dumplings, you only get 2 or 3 small dumplings. So you need to get
that's typical.
So the portion is relatively yeah. But I on that note, I actually have to share a funny story because I would have some American friends visit me every once in a while, pre-pandemic, obviously. And then usually when we go to the dim sum restaurant, I love ordering the chicken feet for them. So chicken feet, it's actually a core part of our culture because when they cook well, it's actually quite delicious.
They are delicious, yeah. It's just for most Americans, they freak out. They would never order
exactly.
them.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where I take my phone out and capture the reaction because I'm like, oh, you've got to hype it up. And this is the best dish, and it's good for you.
Delicious.
It's got collagen. It's good for your skin. It's good for your bone. And they open the cage, and it's obviously chicken feet. And I was like,
yeah, you gotta,
and you got to suck on it, and that's what people do. And hey, but it's food like these that obviously Dr. K. Shanahan talked about how it is actually great for the body. And this brings to the profound point where when I was in the US for a while, I was disgusted by chicken feet because it's like, why would you eat chicken feet? That's just not natural. But then, all these years that I've been back in Hong Kong, I realized, well, actually, this is natural. And and back then, when we kill a chicken, we eat everything of that chicken.
Yeah, so no matter what animal you raised, generally,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so to that point, I just getting back to the food that you are able to have available to you in China. What is it that I guess on other sources of protein and sources of just, I guess, good health that Chinese culture has that America just does not? And maybe just like the chicken feet example, we probably won't ever get to really accepting and actually taking in.
Yeah, I would say that another principle that we put out in our balance is we should eat what's available locally. And in Hong Kong, obviously, we're quite Western influenced because we're a former British colony. So compared to the mainland Chinese, we already, eat a lot less funky stuff. I mean, if you go there, we'll be disgusted by the stuff they eat. But anyways, so we eat the normal stuff, but we'll add in duck, we'll have goose and just more variety of meat. But then this all changed when I was in Scandinavia 3 years ago for my honeymoon in December. And I found out they were eating moose meat and all these different meat that I would not have access to. So regardless of where you tune in to the podcast, I would say whatever is available locally is what you should purchase and eat. And here, actually, we have the same meat, but it's just we're tolerant of different kinds of meat. So in terms of, to answer your question, I would say there's no different here. It's just things are a bit more fresh.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. So you talk about, you talk about harmony, and we touched a little bit on balance in the body. Is this the same thing, harmony and balance, in your opinion?
Oh, I love this question. So I would say sometimes when we think of the word balance, we assume that we should have equal amounts of everything. Meaning, if we let's use the 5 tastes that we talked about in Chinese medicine as an example. Which, by the way, I think I've never mentioned it in the podcast. I would say so. There's sour, there's sweet, there's bitter, there's spicy, and there's salty. So the 5 common tastes that we find. And sometimes when we think of this balanced lifestyle, we would just think that we should have equal amounts of everything. But in Chinese medicine, we would say that depending on your constitution or your body state, your current body state, you should eat different foods and have portions of different foods. So if you think of like a symphony or like an orchestra in music, right? You have different number of instruments, and sometimes you only have 1 piano because it wouldn't make sense to have 10 pianos in the orchestra. Yet, if you think of violin, you have to have a lot of them in order to sound good. So it's the very same way with diet. I think people just assume that there's a one size fit all solution, but I know that the listeners on this podcast will know that this is certainly not true. And depending on kind of your body condition and the current season, you should have different portions of different food. And that's why we think harmony is a better fitting word than balance.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Andy, so to your point about the 5 senses, when you say, like I said, so the 5 tastes, correct?
Correct.
So sweetness, I would always associate with sugar. And is there a place for sugar in Chinese medicine in that way?
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, sugar is key. If you think about glycogen, it's sugar, carbs, the sugar. It's key to energy production. And there is a reason why we crave sugar, because throughout thousands of years, sugar gave us energy. And yet we're talking about natural sugar. And as we found out earlier in the podcast, nowadays our taste buds are so acclimated to all these refined sugar. So our tolerance for sugar, the taste of sweetness has gone up exponentially. And I think that's the current problem. It's not the sugar that's the problem. If we have fruits, if we have just things that are sweet in nature, naturally, I think it'll be fine.
Got it.
Yeah, just not in excess is your philosophy.
Yeah, not in excess. And I remember, right? People always say that we should live in moderation, and that seems to be the key. Mm-hmm. But if you're having refined food, then there's no such thing as moderation, because you've already gone over that balance point. So it's, unless if you're just talking about all natural foods, just having everything in moderation really it's impractical.
Okay. What you talk about the link between diet and emotions and soft tissue health is, when you talk about soft tissue, you're talking about our cartilage or talking about the fascia?
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about the fascia. So, and in my case, because I'm an exercise professional, I'm mainly referring to the fascia underneath the skin that wraps around the muscles, the myofascia.
Okay. And there is a link between that and emotion and diet.
Correct, because if you allow me, I can just briefly go over how they're connected, and we'll actually have to start from the mind or the nervous system. Most people are familiar with 2 nervous system responses, and those are the fight or flight and the rest and digest. if you think about the fight or flight, as the name suggests, if you think about thousands of years ago, we'll be having a nice meal, and you might seen a predator. You might have seen a predator, a lion or a bear or something. And at that moment, you have two options: you either fight it or you fight from it. And so as a result, in this nervous system response, our body will be primed into a more rigid state because our fascia has to tighten up so that we can be ready to produce as much force as possible in the shortest amount of time, because we have to fight them. And at this state, the digestive system shuts off a little bit. And hence why, if you think about before an important meeting, before an important game day, you get butterflies in your stomach because your digestive system is just not it preserves energy so that energy can be utilized for other parts or by other parts of the body. On the other hand, if you think about the rest and digest state, this is when recovery happens. This is when our heart rate goes down and our muscles will become more pliable. And then, so we already see in when we're stressed and when we're relaxed, it plays a profound difference in our soft tissue. And then when you think of diet, because our soft tissues mainly consists of fluids. So if we have a diet that's dehydrating, then it's only going to make us more rigid and tight, as we are already. Right? Most people would complain
very interesting.
about that.
Yeah.
And then if you think about movement, well, earlier in this podcast episode, we talked about how sitting elicits a fight or flight response. Because if we're just sitting all the time, you can do nothing but chest breathe. So, all three of us can try this right now. And all of you guys who are listening can also try this. If you're sitting in a chair right now, you can try to be in a hunchback posture. Oh, wait, most of us are already here. So, okay, we're in the perfect posture to start. So in this posture, what you find is your breaths are limited. Meaning, if you try to take a deep breath through your nose, you're quite constricted by your chest. And as a result, you have trouble taking deep breaths. So you're reinforcing this stress state, because we can actually manipulate our minds by doing chest breathing. And in that way, we can amp ourselves, we can upregulate ourselves. And
that is so
therefore,
important.
When we're setting,
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
sorry.
Yeah. So not only are we stationary sitting in the hunchback posture for extended periods of time, we're also doing chest breathing, which actually elicits a sympathetic or a fight or flight response from the brain. So, and then because we're sitting for 8 hours a day, we're not drinking much water. We're not really moving much. And then diet wise, we talked about the importance of having real food plus supplements. Yet, I think most of us would agree that a lot of times people who are uneducated will think that supplements can replace the main foods, but they're meant to be supplements. And this is also a problem, because that means we're not getting quality food. We're stressed all the time by our work, by social media, by different stimuluses, and then we're not moving. And then so it's the combination of these three that kind of messes up with the homeostasis inside the body. And as a result, some people, sometimes they'll come in and they'll be like, I'm only drinking water and I'm still getting fat. Why is that? Or I'm not even doing anything. Why am I stiff and tight and achy everywhere? And I would say, well, this is why you have to look at the connection between different aspects, because ultimately they're intricately and inseparably linked.
That's one point I'm glad that you brought up, because I think that's kind of the difference between traditional Chinese medicine and like Western thought, because in the West, everything is like isolated and it's just like we kind of compartmentalize everything. Can you talk about the traditional Chinese medicine's holistic approach to health and weight loss overall?
Yeah. When you go to the difference from the beginning, when you go to a physician or Chinese medicine physician versus a westernized, when you go to Chinese medicine physician, they'll ask about your lifestyle, and they'll kind of look at the environmental factors, because again, if we don't live in harmony with the current environment, then it upsets my body's natural mechanism, and as a result, we deviate from what's normal. So a lot of times, because of obviously currently in our current lifestyle, junk food and processed food is probably a huge area. But they'll also look at your skin, they'll also look at your pulse, and all these, just to figure out whether you're living the way you're supposed to.
What should your palms look like?
Your palms. Well, I think. Oh, sorry. They'll look at your pulse. So they do your pulse.
Okay.
Where your wrist, where your wrist is, and that tells you a lot about the body state. And I've heard that it is quite complicated, and that's one area that I wish I would know more about, but I will stick to my fitness world and fitness job.
I hear you.
Yeah, and so I would say that once you go in, they'll ask you. So we actually have a questionnaire in Dynamic Balance, and it has about 50 questions in there. And the whole reason of us including this questionnaire is because over the past 20 years, Chinese medicine practitioners have been trying to standardize the questions that they ask so that there's a benchmark. And we included the full set of those questions. So when you go to a Chinese medicine practitioner, they will ask, some of these questions. They won't ask you 50 questions, of course, but they will ask you maybe 10 or 15 that they think are relevant to your case. But I can tell you all of them is just in relation to your lifestyle, different areas of your lifestyle, and perhaps the way your skin is looking, the way you're sleeping, because all of these indicates a lot about your habits and whether you're living according to how you're supposed to.
That's fascinating stuff. I love this topic. This is something that I've always had an interest in. So Andy, we usually keep a guy for 30, 40 minutes. This is our sweet spot. And I think we all have a bunch of additional questions that we could ask, but just for preserving time and you're giving us this opportunity. I know it's the first thing in the morning over there. We're going to just wrap it up now. And I was just going to hope that you can give us your social media handles, your website, anything
where we can find your book.
Where we can find the book and anything the avenue that we can actually keep in touch with what you're doing.
Yeah. So Dynamic Balance is available everywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Hudson, I think even Target now. I think I saw it on Target.com the other day. So just search Dynamic Balance and it should be everywhere.
Dynamic Balance is the name.
Dynamic Balance is the name. And then you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram account is Tichu Andy, TSZCHIU Andy. By the way, Tichu is my first name. So sometimes when I'm in the US, there's a space between TSZ and CHIU because there are 3 characters in my Chinese name. And sometimes people think that Chi is my first name and then Chu is my second name. But these characters together is my first name. So Tichu Andy.
Interesting.
That's my Instagram account. And then my website is tichu.com.
Tichu. Okay.
Tichu, yeah. And before you subscribe to my website, I would just advise everyone to wait for a few days because at the time of our recording, which is in the middle of May right now, I was checking my website yesterday and it's under attack by these scammers. And I'm getting like 20 membership requests every single day, which is a lot for me. And so I'm trying to work that out. But I think by the time this podcast is published, it should be fine.
Yeah, that's great. And you have your Instagram account shows you showing different physical fitness, right? Strength positions, etc.
Yep. So my job. Yeah, my daytime job, well, my main job is I'm a fitness instructor. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. So I'm more a fitness coach, and I'll be happy to kind of share with anyone out there who is interested to learn more about how my coaching philosophy is shaped and influenced by both actually Western medicine and Chinese medicine. And if they want to know more, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to answer all the questions that you or anyone may have.
It's all about balance and harmony. And you're in great shape, by the way.
Right. Oh, thank you. Fun fact, I actually don't do any protein shakes. So I know that it is a big thing in the fitness world to consume protein shakes, but I don't because every single time I have it, I get a bloated stomach.
Exactly. And so they're not good like you said, we're all different,
Yeah. So just a last word of encouragement. If anyone thinks that you have to put on size and therefore you have to drink protein shakes, please know that if your body cannot handle it, there's no point in forcing yourself to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, when I was lifting heavy back when I was a lot younger, that was one of the main reasons I think I put on weight because it was just filled with sugar and a lot of it had at the time MSG and all kinds of messed up junk. And and once I cut that kind of stuff out, I did actually lose weight and still preserve the muscle without the need for shakes. So I'm not a fan, especially when you don't know. I'm not sure if you're familiar, and Laura, you probably heard of it like this. It used to be called muscle milk.
Oh, yeah. In fact, never mind. It's a long story. another day.
Yeah, never mind. The more of the story is because the supplement industry is not regulated. So just make sure everyone out there, you go for quality brands and brands that are ethical, because some brands are definitely not.
Yeah, I have a lot of sugar. So you have to be really, really careful.
Yeah, definitely.
Sugar, added hormones. I mean, you don't know what they put in there. Like,
nah, exactly.
Great, Andy.
But yeah, no, you've been fantastic. And I'm glad that you mentioned your physical fitness and personal training part, because that was kind of where this show could have went. And you have a lot of followers as far as what you do in that realm. But I just really appreciate you giving this topic an introduction to our audience as far as the traditional Chinese medicine goes. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for stopping by, as always.
Well, thank you for having me, and welcome to the future again.
Yes, I know. What is it? 7? No, it must be going on. Like a little after 8 in the morning there.
Yeah, 8 a.m. now. 8 a.m. now.
All right.
Wonderful.
I hope the future is bright for us all. So
yes.
Thanks, Andy.
Apparently it is.
All righty.
See you later.
All right. Take care.
See you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.